Welcome back to Loudness War. Thanks to your feedback as early watchers, I was able to fix some issues with sound quality and image quality, so now we are good to go. Today's topic is FM synthesis, a sound design technique well known but maybe not as popular as subtractive synthesis, for instance. And the reason for that is FM synthesis is not that easy to grasp. Basically, FM synthesis is a mathematical concept. And it's difficult to learn just by turning knobs by ear. To really make best use of FM synthesis, you need to understand what you're doing. But don't worry, it's not that difficult, and I'm here to explain it. The use of FM, frequency modulation synthesis, for musical sound design was first popularized by John Chowning in his book FM Theory and Applications. And this one is basically a cookbook for a hardware synth, DX7 by Yamaha, which was first commercially successful digital synth. And the fact that it was digital is quite important here, as a proper FM synthesis is only possible in digital domain. There are many plugins which employ this technique. For instance, Dext, which is basically an emulation of DX7, but also some more adventurous designs such as Native Instruments FM8 and ImageLine Psytrance, and many others, of course. But some of you may now complain, hey, wait a minute, my analog synth also has FM input, what do you mean it's not a proper FM synth? Well, you would be right, my Make Noise No Coast also has an FM input which allows it to make somewhat FM-ish sounds, but it doesn't give anyone access to the whole palette and FM synthesis has to offer. Alright, let's start with a simple demonstration of what FM, frequency modulation, is all about. Well, frequency modulation can be performed with pretty much any synth that has pitch LFO. So for this one I picked our good old silent one and just play a sine wave at middle C. It could be simpler, it's just a pure sine wave with pure spectrum and just one frequency peak at fixed frequency. Now let's increase the LFO gain so it starts moving and the pitch is changing. Let's increase the rate so it falls somewhere in a vibrato range. Alright, but we can still hear and see modulated sine wave. Now if you increase the gain further and increase the frequency so it falls into audible range, at some point it totally breaks and it does no longer sound like a sine wave. The waveform is nothing like a sine wave, and the frequency also has now a multitude of partials at different frequencies. Now, if we can do that with specific settings, with a precisely defined modulation frequency and precisely controlled modulation depth, then we can achieve a variety of very interesting sonic results, and that's exactly what FM synthesis is all about and what I will be showing. For the rest of this video I'll be using Ableton Operator, a basic FM synth which nonetheless has all the features that we need. It does have ratio control, which determines the frequency of an operator. It does have amplitude control, which determines the depth of modulation. It does have a selection of algorithms which determine which frequency is controlled by which operator. And finally, it does have an envelope control which allows us to modulate the modulation depth over time, like that. Okay, so what do we have here? First, start with operator A, playing a sine wave like before. And now the frequency of operator A is modulated by operator B. If we increase the modulation depth of operator B, like that, it will result in a partials added to the spectrum, and their exact position is determined by operator B frequency. Then there is a formula for that, which is, well, not that scary. Note that the integer k can be positive, and this results in a frequency higher than a base frequency. But k, however, can be also negative, and that will result in a frequency lower than our center frequency. Thanks to coarse controlling operator, we can tune the operator B to be always an integer multiplier of operator A frequency. And this results in a harmonic spectrum. Let's try. 2, 3. And we can make sure it's harmonic by playing a familiar C major chord. Now it definitely sounds harmonic, and you can recognize it. At any ratio, it's still harmonic. However, we can also detune operator B, and hear what happens. Now the frequencies are inharmonic, and the chord is no longer recognizable. This is kind of metallic sound, often associated with FM synthesis. It's inharmonic, and now you already know how to create it. That was it for frequency ratio, but we can also change the modulation depth. At 0, operator B, well, there is no modulation. If we increase the modulation depth, the partials will show up, resulting in brighter sound. And if we lower the amplitude of modulation, then it will get darker. We can use that for filtering purposes, like that. There's an envelope modulating operator B modulation depth. Let's try it. So this is somewhat like low-pass filter, however with no resonance, and the sound is quite different. But if you wonder if it does have any practical application, then let's try this classic house bassline. It's already pretty good to me at the first try. That's how we do it. This is the classic FM sound of house bassline. So far we had only 2 operators, the B modulating operator A, but we can add more. Here is operator C in series modulating operator's B frequency. Let's hear how does it sound. This is classic harpichord sound. The operators are all tuned to integers, which results in this very clean and harmonic sound. We can make it brighter, but we can also change the frequency ratio of operator B to another integer, and that creates some very interesting interplay of harmonies, and to my ear it sounds even better. This is very useful for all kinds of piano and bell sounds. So far, in every example we've seen, the frequency of modulator was higher than the frequency of bass operator. But it doesn't need to be the case. In this example, the ratio of bass frequency is set to 2, and the ratio of modulator is set to half. Let's see how does it sound. Let's bring the modulator. This results in a frequency spectrum that is symmetric around the bass frequency, or with different ratio, like that. See where the center frequency is and where the spectrum goes. This is completely different than, for instance, a classic saw oscillator, which is all integers on the right hand side of the bass frequency. This is also very different than any acoustic instrument for that matter, because such symmetric spectrum simply does not occur in reality. So it does sound very unnatural to our ear. And this is why this kind of sound is often used in some high-tech psytrance. Let's try this. With different flavor. Something like that, you get the idea. So we've created something that other synthesis techniques couldn't achieve. Alright, I think that's enough for today. The basics of FM synthesis were covered. However, there is much more to say about it, and I'm pretty sure I'll be making another video explaining more advanced techniques of FM synthesis. If you don't want to miss it, just hit subscribe.